Welcome to day 15 of the book The Absolute Law of Karma, written by our Param Pujya Gurudev Pandit Shri Ram Sharma Acharya. In the previous audio, we learned about how passive acquiescence to any evil deed can also make you a part of that evil karma. And what are Sanchit karmas? Sanchit karmas are those karmas that leave very feeble or weak impressions on our subconscious, on our inner self, on our antahakaran, which get accumulated, and if given the right kind of environment or a favorable environment in a latter life, they get activated, whether bad environment for bad sanskars or good environment for good sanskars. Now we shall move on to study what are Prarabdh Karmas, which are karmas or deeds done with a strong emotional involvement. Let's read further. Mental karmas, which are voluntarily, deliberately performed under strong emotional stimuli, are known as Prarabdh Karmas. Being motivated by intense emotions, such karmas produce powerful sanskars. Reactions of violent acts like murder, robbery, betrayal, felony, or immoral, passionate acts like adultery are very strongly felt by the inner conscience. Its innate spiritual purity is ever eager to get rid of this extraneous, deleterious impurity at the earliest opportunity. Extraneous, deleterious impurity means something that is arising from and something that is having an external origin. And deleterious means something that's causing harm, adverse. So the spirit, the inner self, the antahakaran, where the Chitragupta resides, our most pure, impartial self, is always eager to separate itself from any kind of externally motivated emotion that at the core is causing an adverse effect or an adverse reaction inside itself. And many extreme reactions of violence, which are acts of murder or robbery or adultery, betrayal, felony, any immoral conduct which is executed passionately with immense emotional involvement, which are done voluntarily, deliberately, on purpose, despite knowing that this is wrong, is considered to be a Prarabdh karma. It has already been mentioned that our inner conscience keeps a constant watch over each of our karmas and determines greater or lesser punishment for each offense, according to the nature of the act. A mental chastisement for a mental offense is, however, not possible without the help of other means. For giving an appropriate punishment, the inner conscience waits for a suitable environment in the subtle world, that is, the Sukshmalok in spiritual parlance, where the divine system correlates sanskars and creates environment for justice. So here Gurudev is trying to explain to us that not always it's possible that our mental punishment is granted to us directly for a mental offense. So sometimes it needs to be assisted by external means, by other means, and hence the inner conscience or the Chitragupta or the impartial inner self that has been noting down each and every single karma of ours till date waits for a suitable time when such a suitable environment has been created. This first happens in the Sukshmalok, which is the subtle world, where the divine justice system correlates the sanskars and the corresponding punishments for the corresponding karmas and creates the environment. and thereby it happens in the physical world, that is in the same life or probably in any of the next few lives. Occasionally, this process is spread over a long time. For instance, for redemption of a mental sin of treachery, the sinner is required to be punished by grief. Chitragupta evaluates the grade of treachery to decide the degree of sorrow required for atonement. For punishing a murderer, the divine system will associate the soul of the sinner with the soul of an individual who, according to its own karmas, can inflict the same degree of pain and grief on the sinner which the latter has caused to the aggrieved person. For instance, Chitragupta may plan birth of a son or daughter in the family of the sinner, who, the newborn, is destined to die at a young age according to its own past karmas. In this case, the inner conscience of the killer will wait for grief-producing event when the son or the daughter meets death by disease or accident. In this way, the sanskars carried over to next life, divine justice creates an environment for punishment equivalent to the sin. So now here Gurudev has taken an example of a person who commits a murder, and then the other person or maybe the near and dear ones of that person who was killed will wait for a grief-producing event in the life of the murderer. So it's not necessarily that that murderer will get killed in his next life by someone, but the grief that he caused with the murder is something that he will have to go through. Therefore, he might have a child or a spouse who gets killed early in life in his association, and then only the inner conscience of the previous aggrieved person will get atonement. It is obvious that this process is not unilateral. Divine justice makes souls of both the sinner and the sinned interact in complementary environment. This complex process at times takes several cycles of life and death. We know that in this world too, it requires a long time and consideration of numerous factors before two individuals become life partners as husband and wife. The popular saying that marriages are made in heaven indirectly refers to the coincidence of sanskars of the bride and the groom. The pain of separation in a divorce too is a consequence of sinful karmas of the past lives. So here Gurudev is trying to tell us that this process of matching of the punishments and matching of the grief that one has to go through for atonement of the inner conscience of the aggrieved person of another life is not so simple and not so unilateral. It is much more complex because the souls and sanskars of both the sinner and the sinned have to be matched and they interact in a complementary environment. It's not necessarily that how they interacted in one life will be right opposite in another life. Therefore, associations that are made in one life apart from, for instance, the family you are born in, or apart from the siblings you get in that family, other long-term associations like that of a husband-wife, or like friendships which are very, very strong and having deep connections, they are arising out of the coincidence of matching of the sanskars. And if there is pain in any relationship or there is a pain of separation, it is also the consequence of the sinful karmas of the past life, which may or may not be necessarily with that soul. But what is certain is that if there is a pain of any sort, then that is your own doing, your own past karma, which your own Chitragupta, your own impartial self, your own inner conscience, the Antahakaran residing inside you, the subconscious mind, is taking note of very, very well. may further try to understand the course of divine justice by an analogy in a natural phenomena. A shrub in Africa called Venus grows to a height of about 3 meters. Out of its branches spread out thin thread-like offshoots. These keep on growing and swaying in the air till they meet another shrub and they become mutually intertwined. Sometimes these shrubs meet each other barely after a growth of a few centimeters, whereas the others succeed in doing so after growing for a few meters. This is the way the fruits of karmas ripen for interaction over different spans of time. The punishment for the exclusively physical sins is physical and is given without much delay. Like consumption of poison results in immediate death. Mental chastisement, on the other hand, is neither instantaneous nor is it unilateral. For instance, if because of a cruel nature someone commits a murder and is caught red-handed, the state awards a death sentence. On the contrary, if the killer commits the offense secretly, the inner conscience does not punish him immediately. It would wait for an environment for creating in his psyche an aversion for violence by making the sinner feel the same degree of pain which was felt by his victim. This is why at times morally vile persons are found rejoicing and righteous ones suffering in life. The enforcer of divine law takes time in preparing an appropriate environment for dispensing just rewards and punishments. So Gurudev is trying to explain us why we see that sometimes good people are suffering so much in life, or the ones who are vile in nature, not ethical, immoral, are found rejoicing and happy in worldly pursuits, because at some point or the other, it is the divine law in spiritual parlance, or their own subconscious mind, their inner conscience, that is waiting for a suitable time and waiting to create the right kind of environment in which the psyche of such people can be molded into such a way such that they feel the agony whenever the punishment is served to them. And that is why we say, there is a saying in Bhagavad Gita also कि खुशी में ज़्यादा खुश नहीं होना चाहिए और दुख में ज़्यादा दुखी नहीं होना चाहिए. Because our Sanatan Dharma has always told us to remain in samata, always remain equanimous in any environment that life puts us into. That don't start being very, very indulgent if you are in a happy place, or don't start being extremely depressive if you are in a bad space. Because समय बहुत बलवान है. The cycle of time, the wheel of time is extremely powerful, and we never know what we have done in our past lives. So we must be ready for any kind of situation and always remain equanimous in every situation. Thank you for listening in today. Pranam everyone.
हमारे YouTube चैनल को सब्सक्राइब कीजिए और बेल आइकन पर क्लिक कीजिए ताकि आने वाली सभी वीडियो की नोटिफिकेशन आपको मिलती रहे. आप सभी को बहुत बहुत थैंक यू.